Fog rolling across the Golden Gate, radar blips flickering, and somewhere in that soup, a small plane losing its way. A seemingly routine scenic flight over San Francisco Bay ended in tragedy. A private pilot, confident and curious, flew straight into a wall of fog. Minutes later, his plane slammed into a hillside in the Marin Headlands. 2 lives gone. So what exactly happened in those final minutes? What did the pilot see? What did he ignore? And what can the rest of us learn from this? A Vans RV-10 November 5-4. Mike Golf, the crash that killed pilot Michael Briare, 57, and his friend Jennifer J.J. Fox, 52, both from Sacramento. Let's start with the basics, the timeline that led up to disaster. It was May 6, 2022. The weather inland looked fine. Blue skies, warm, light wind, perfect flying day. Michael Briare took off from Sacramento Executive Airport in his sleek, 4-seat Vans RV-10, an experimental home-built aircraft he knew well. The plan was simple. Fly down to Half Moon Bay with a little detour, a scenic bay tour over San Francisco. About 20 minutes into the flight, he called up air traffic control, cheerful and relaxed, asking permission to circle the bay at 2,500 feet. The controller said okay, but warned him to stay clear of Class B airspace. Above 3,000 feet, that's where the heavy jets into SFO come in. So, Briare starts his tour, circling Alcatraz, passing over Treasure Island, giving his passenger that postcard view. But after the sightseeing loop, he asks again to proceed to Half Moon Bay, the coast. The controller repeats the same instruction: stay below Class B and remain visual. Now here's where things start to change. The ADS-B data shows the airplane beginning a series of climbs, descents, and erratic turns. The altitude drops below 2,100 feet as the aircraft drifts toward the Golden Gate Bridge. And at 12:10 p.m., radio contact stops. The next trace is impact. The RV-10 hit the side of a hill at about 800 feet elevation. Investigators found the engine was running, propeller blades twisted from power. No mechanical issue, no failure. The airplane was fine, until the pilot flew it somewhere no VFR aircraft belongs. That's the setup. But to understand why this happened, you need to know who these people were, and how their personalities shaped what came next. Michael B. Briare wasn't a rookie. He was 57, a successful insurance executive from Sacramento, sharp, confident, used to being in charge. His friends say he loved flying, loved showing people the world from above. He wasn't reckless in the sense of being wild, more like assertive. Even his instructor described him as pushy and his own boss. Sitting next to him that day was Jennifer J.J. Fox, 52, a Sacramento esthetician, mom, and friend. She wasn't a pilot. She trusted Michael. It was supposed to be a fun, scenic trip, nothing more. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Michael had instrument flight training, about 40 hours, yet no instrument rating. He wasn't legally allowed to fly in clouds. Still, his own logbook entries tell a story. Flights into instrument conditions without an instructor. Notes like, fly IFR in IMC for 30 minutes. No issue. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a deliberate choice. A pilot convinced he could handle it. And that confidence, mixed with experience, ego, and a touch of invincibility, creates what aviation psychologists call the illusion of skill. When you've done something risky before and it worked out, you start to believe you can do it again. The danger feels smaller each time. So picture this: a confident pilot, a trusting friend, and a fog bank rolling in from the Pacific. What could possibly go wrong? Now, let's talk about that fog, because it's not ordinary fog. The San Francisco marine layer is practically alive. It creeps inland, swallowing the coast in minutes. You can fly from clear blue skies to total whiteout in less than a mile. That morning, the base of the fog sat around 200 feet above ground, with the top near 2,800 feet, exactly where Briare was flying. The bridge cameras showed it clearly. Visibility less than half a mile, even the top of the Golden Gate's North Tower invisible. Witnesses said they could barely see 50 yards. To a VFR pilot, that's a death trap. You look ahead and think, I can still see the ground. It's just a little haze. Then 1 second later, nothing. No horizon, no visual reference, just gray. And here's the trick. From above, that fog layer looks harmless, like a fluffy blanket. So when you're cruising at 2,000 feet, it feels fine. But once you dip into it, every visual cue disappears. You can't tell up from down, left from right. Pilots call it the leans, or the graveyard spiral. The senses betray you. The inner ear lies. And unless you're trained and current on instruments, your brain simply can't keep up. So when Briare pressed toward the coast, he wasn't just entering fog. He was stepping into an environment designed to confuse him. So how does a pilot go from a calm bay tour to a fatal dive into terrain? It's not one bad call, it's a chain of small decisions, each one feeling justifiable in the moment. First, there's momentum bias, or what pilots call get-there-itis. He'd already committed to this plan, a scenic detour, then lunch at Half Moon Bay. Turning back would have felt like giving up. And when a pilot has a passenger on board, especially a friend they want to impress, that pressure doubles. Then comes the illusion of skill. Briare had some instrument training, sure, but no rating. Yet, in his mind, he'd handled it before. He'd flown into clouds, logged no issue, and walked away fine. That kind of experience can be more dangerous than ignorance, because it replaces humility with false confidence. And once a pilot gets away with risky behavior, it becomes habit, what we call normalization of deviance. Each time you cross the line and survive, that line moves a little farther. He might have even seen a small break in the clouds and thought, looks clear enough ahead. That's confirmation bias, believing the piece of evidence that supports what you want to be true, while ignoring the dozen that warn otherwise. But the worst part comes when the fog finally closes in. It's the startle effect. 1 second you can see the hills and water, the next, everything vanishes. The inner ear sends conflicting signals and you feel like you're level even when you're banking hard. The NTSB said it best. The erratic turns and altitude swings in those final minutes were classic spatial disorientation. No engine issue, no structural failure. Just the human brain trying to fly blind. So, let's reconstruct what likely happened in those last 40 seconds. The ADS-B data tells the story. The RV-10 drops from 1,300 feet to under 1,000, still turning, airspeed falling from 79 knots to 63 knots. That's dangerously close to the RV-10's stall speed, about 64 knots clean. Think about that. Descending, turning, in fog, with no horizon. That's the perfect setup for a stall spin. Once that wing drops, at 800 feet above hilly terrain, you've got maybe 3 seconds to recover. That's not even enough time to process what's happening. The impact angle, steep, nose down, confirms it. Not a glide, not an engine out, it's loss of control. And this is where it gets haunting. Spatial disorientation doesn't feel chaotic to the pilot. Often it feels smooth. You believe you're flying level until you look at the instruments. And by then, the world's upside down. Inside that fog, there are no outside cues, just your body lying to you. And once your senses lose the fight, physics takes over. No amount of skill or strength can overpower the laws of motion. That's why the NTSB concluded. This wasn't weather turning bad. It was judgment that didn't turn back. Here's where this tragedy hits home, because it's not rare. Every year, general aviation loses pilots to the same trap. VFR into IMC, visual flight pilots pressing into cloud. The FAA and AOPA have hammered this for decades, but the stats don't lie. Once you lose visual reference in IMC, survival time without instrument training averages under 3 minutes. So what can we actually take from this? First, never, ever push a VFR flight into known or forecast fog. It looks fine, is not a weather briefing. Second, set hard personal minimums. If the coast is showing marginal visibility, divert inland or wait. Third, an instrument rating and currency aren't just for flying in clouds. They're about being ready when things change unexpectedly. And if you do get surprised by lowering visibility, the safest move isn't to climb or push ahead. It's the 180-degree turn back to clear skies. Simple, quick, and it saves lives. For passengers, there's a takeaway too. Speak up. If you see conditions getting worse, ask questions. Trusting the pilot is fine, but blind trust has limits. And yes, one could argue, what if the RV-10 had an autopilot or better avionics? Maybe that could have helped, but automation doesn't fix judgment. You still have to choose when not to go. So this accident wasn't about engines or equipment. It was about confidence outrunning capability, and a pilot's belief that he could handle what his training said he shouldn't. Flying is beautiful, until it isn't. The fog doesn't care about ratings, pride, or plans. Michael Briare and Jennifer Fox paid the ultimate price for a decision that thousands of pilots have been tempted to make. The clouds don't negotiate. The air doesn't forgive. And confidence without humility is just another way to spell disaster. All right, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you learned something or just enjoy these deep dive crash breakdowns, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe, stay smart, and I'll catch you in the next video.